All right. So if you are here for the Managing Worry After a Cancer Diagnosis talk, you are in the right place. So welcome, welcome. And our next slide, I am so excited to introduce Mihaela, who actually has been with Wellspring in the past as well. So she's such a lovely, lovely person that we're so grateful for her time and that she is able to collaborate with us for today's talk. So Mihaela is a social worker, a psychotherapist, and a qualified mindfulness instructor in Toronto. And she has worked with cancer survivors for the last 11 years. So Mihaela has been counseling cancer survivors around challenges associated with cancer survivorship, and she has been delivering mindfulness programs for cancer survivors, staff in healthcare, graduate students, and correctional officers in the last several years. So we're very grateful to have her with us today. And I hope you all find the presentation very informative and helpful as well. So Mihaela, I'll pass it over to you.
Thank you, Vinita. Hi, everybody. Welcome. I'm glad to be spending this lunch hour with you guys, talking about worry, something that I feel very passionate about in my work with cancer survivors. And I also hope you'll find today's presentation helpful and informative. So before we begin, I'd just like to acknowledge the land that we're on. The land on which I am here today is the traditional territory of the Huron-Wendat and the Anishinaabe and the Haudenosaunee, and the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. And while this is not a workshop, although I'd love it to be, it's not a workshop, there will be lots of opportunity to reflect on how this material and how this information can fit into your life. So I'm going to encourage you to get a pen and paper, to take some notes about some things that might be helpful or stand out to you, but also to take a few moments to think about what might be useful for you in taking care of yourself today. We'll be talking about worry. I'm going to have some examples of common things that people worry about when they're going through cancer. And if you find any of this information distressing, just please take a moment to practice self-care. Get up from your chair, move around. Take a moment now to think about what might be useful for you to take care of yourself. Aromatherapy, maybe a soap or a perfume next to you to smell. A glass of water to drink, or just getting up. Okay. I know I'll have my tea here today because I'm a little sick, so hopefully I won't be coughing too much today in the presentation. So the first thought I have here about worry is a quote that I wanted to share because it really aligns with the goal for today. Worry never robs tomorrow of its sorrow, it only saps today of its joy. To manage our expectations about today and to be on the same page, I want to invite you to consider the goal for today to be to manage worry. So we can focus on the here and now, so we can be present in our daily lives, and in order for us not to let life pass us by. The goal is not to demonize worry or to hate it or to figure out a strategy so that we never worry again. It's to work with it, acknowledge it when it's helpful, and to manage it so that it doesn't take over too much, so we can still function and do the things we want to do. And in terms of what to expect today, so I'll be talking about worry, its purpose and its function within the context of anxiety and fear. I'll be talking about some worry beliefs that perpetuate worry and make it more persistent. I'll be talking about some coping strategies, some unhelpful coping strategies and helpful coping strategies. And the ones that are helpful will be going into a lot more detail. There's 5 of them that I'll be presenting today. And I'll be talking about some strategies to kind of implement the changes, some tricks to make it last. And finally, I'll give you an opportunity to reflect on how to integrate this information into your life if you find it at all useful. So what is worry? In order to understand worry better and learn to manage it better, we'll talk about its function, okay? So in the larger context of anxiety and fear. And I'm going to simplify things a little bit just to make some important distinctions. So let's talk about fear first. What is fear? It's an evolutionarily purposeful emotion. Okay, it's necessary for survival. It's a basic intense emotion that's in response to an imminent threat involving an immediate reaction, right? So the body mobilizes, the muscles get ready to fight or flee or fight. And there's a lot of physiological reactions, right, to prepare the body. And I'm going to encourage you to think about what is the purpose, what's the function of fear. Oops. And I wanted to ask if anybody's comfortable writing in the chat what you think the function of fear is. What might be the function of fear? To keep us safe from danger. That's right, Shannon. Thank you. Yes, it's for protection, right? To keep us safe from danger. So without fear, we don't know when to protect ourselves. So fear is a very useful emotion to alert us to the fact that we need protection and safety. So for example, you step across the street to cross the street, and you see a car speeding. So that's the current threat. It might threaten your life. You experience fear. It's an imminent threat. It's here right now. And fear mobilizes your body really quickly to do something about it so that you can protect yourself. And in response to this healthy cycle, the current threat disappears because you are getting away from danger, and fear also disappears. Okay, so it does not continue. The loop does not continue. And let's talk about anxiety right now. So what's anxiety? Anxiety is the same response, but instead of it being to an imminent threat that's here right now, it's to an anticipated threat. Okay, so anxiety, again, it's an impending danger, it's anticipated threat. It also creates physiological responses in the body, and it's future oriented rather than present oriented. It's long lasting rather than short-lived, and it's in response to a diffuse threat, whereas fear is in response to a specific, identifiable, clear threat. Okay, so I'm going to ask you now to think about what might be the function of anxiety, and to write it in the chat. What's the function or the purpose of anxiety? Yes, possibly to motivate us. That's great. Yep. To act, help us to act, to prevent. That's right. Yep. Thank you. Yes, that's great. So similar to fear is to protect us. That's right, Yvonne. So similar to fear, it's also to protect us, but it's to protect us for an anticipated threat, right? So to keep us alert about that threat, aware of the risks, and to motivate us to solve problems. Yes, and so for example, right? For example, I'm anxious about my oncology appointment, follow-up appointment tomorrow. And the function here might be to be alert about the importance of this appointment, right? So we don't miss it. It's an important appointment. It's on our minds. We don't want to miss it. I want to say that just having anxiety doesn't mean that we have an anxiety disorder. Anxiety disorders happen when anxiety is pervasive. It impairs our ability to function every day. It causes a significant distress, so we can't take care of daily tasks. For example, we might not be able to remember new information, or we might be unable to follow through with medical tests and things like that. So if this is the case, or if you are wondering whether it's developed into an anxiety disorder, I would encourage you to speak to your doctor. There's a lot of support out there for anxiety, but I wanted to draw that distinction that just having anxiety doesn't mean that we have a mental health diagnosis, okay? So what is worry? Worry is part of anxiety, and it's a state of mental distress or agitation due to a concern about an impending or anticipated threat, danger, or event. So it's part of anxiety, and it's the thought part of anxiety, okay? So worry is when we think about the future with anxiety. It's a chain of thoughts and images. It's not an emotion. Anxiety and fear are emotions. Worry is not an emotion. It's the cognitive process, okay? So we can recognize it easily by statements that start with what if. What if my blood count will be lower and I need to delay my next treatment? What if my ride comes late? What if I get COVID? And I'm going to ask again to think about what might be the function of worry. What would be the purpose of worry? Anybody can write in the chat their thoughts. Yeah, to help problem solve. Great. The stories we tell ourselves to cope. Yeah. Oh, you want me to turn my volume up? I'm not sure how to do that. Vanessa, do you have any ideas? Is it hard to hear me? Can other people, are other people having a hard time hearing me? Just gonna interrupt here. Yes, no, I can't see anybody, so you'll have to write in the chat. Okay, other people can hear me okay. Okay. Yes. So some people have a hard time hearing me, some people don't. I'm wondering if those who don't, it might be an issue on your end. I'm not sure what to say. Maybe Vinita, you have some suggestions that you can add over the chat. But I'm going to continue here. So the function of worry, I'll try to speak louder. The function of worry is to keep us alert of the possibilities, right? To help us problem solve. You guys nailed it. So it's the same function as anxiety, and to motivate us to solve problems. So it's to keep our attention on the potential danger, so we can think about what to do, how to prevent it, what to prepare for, how to keep ourselves safe. So for example, if I know my PET scan, for example, might show cancer, I can be prepared to taking time off of work for treatment. We cannot really talk about worry without talking about uncertainty. It's such a big theme in how people experience worry. And generally our minds don't like uncertainty, they don't like ambiguity. And so those of us who have a harder time tolerating uncertainty and ambiguity tend to worry more and to have it be more persistent. And I want to draw the difference between worry and problem solving, because as someone mentioned, and I'll talk a little bit more about, worry is not the same thing as problem solving. Worry can help lead us into problem solving. But when we're solving problems, we're actually focusing on actions rather than being stuck in agitation and distress, which is worry. One way of looking at worry is that it's an attempt of problem solving, right? It can be functional when it leads us into problem solve, but it can be dysfunctional if it's lasting for a really long time, or we get stuck in worry and we don't go into problem solving. So dysfunctional worry, I'll just give an example here. Dysfunctional worry, for example, is for example, there's an anticipated threat. So I have a pain in my leg. Okay, I'm anxious about it because, and the worry says, what if this relates to cancer? What if my cancer has spread? What if my treatment won't work? What if I lose my ability to walk, etc. This is an example of thinking about the future with anxiety. And worry is kind of like the brainstorming, searching function of the mind. The more it is active, the more options it will find. And when we're in worry mode, we're not looking at solutions, only at possibilities. And it will keep finding more anticipated threats, right? So this is how it perpetuates the anxiety. It's an incomplete attempt at solving the problem with the anticipated threat. When it's functional, I have a new pain in my leg, I'm anxious about it. What if it's relating to my cancer? And we don't stay stuck in worry, but we move into problem solving. Let me see what I can do about it. What are my options? What's in my control? I can keep a pain diary and report it at my oncology appointment in 2 days from now. That's an example of problem solving. That's an example of how worry leads, when it's functional, it can lead us into problem solving. And I want to say that we don't continue to search for more threats here, but we channel into problem solving. And also that it actually, in this scenario, the brainstorming function might be actually really useful, because it will relate the new pain to a potential threat, to cancer. If we didn't have worry here, we might actually miss the opportunity to report an important symptom. So again, I'm simplifying things a little bit to make a point here, okay? So here's a summary of what I just said. So fear and anxiety are emotions. Worry is a cognitive process, it's in thoughts. Fear is about an imminent threat that's happening right now. Anxiety is about anticipated threat. Worry is also about anticipated threat because it's part of anxiety. Fear is present, anxiety and worry are future oriented, and they can all be real or imagined. So fear can be real or imagined. We might think that we see a car at the corner of our eye and turn around and see it was actually just a pedestrian, right? That's an imagined fear. And similarly, anxiety and worry can be real or imagined. And the reason why I'm naming this and drawing this distinction is because we use these terms interchangeably, and to know the difference between a thought and emotion might actually be very useful in directness how to manage it and using the right tool. For thoughts, we can use cognitive strategies to work with the thoughts. For emotions, we might want to use emotional expression or grounding strategies. So it's important to kind of know what we're working with. And one thing I've learned so much in doing this work with supporting people with cancer in their cancer experience is that if you can name it, you can tame it. This is a famous quote by Dan Siegel. Really, that awareness can be the first step in managing what we're dealing with. And because when we don't have awareness, we focus on what happens is what comes on autopilot. And that can be sometimes helpful, or it cannot be helpful. But without being conscious of it, we don't have an opportunity to choose how we respond to the situation, and we might not use the right tool. For example, I've worked a lot with people around their fear of cancer recurrence after they finish treatment. So they're, they finish treatment, their scans are clear, and now they're supposed to go back to their life, right, which is very difficult for many people. And people find themselves preoccupied with the possibility of recurrence. So oftentimes what they found helpful is to distinguish between the fear and the anxiety. Is this a present concern or is it a future concern? And to remind themselves, to ground themselves in the present, that right now they're not end of life, right now they have time, right now they're not being treated for cancer. People find that really useful. So I hope that this kind of distinction can be supportive to you. So this really begs the question, why do we worry? And what makes worry more persistent if it's supposed to be helpful and sometimes it's not? And some of the research suggests that part of the answer to this is the beliefs we carry about worry. So how we feel about worry, how useful it is to us, or how controllable or dangerous it is to us, influences how persistent it will be. So there's something called positive worry beliefs and negative worry beliefs. Both positive and negative worry beliefs correlate with worry being more persistent. So with high anxiety level and depression levels. So I'll talk a little bit about what they are. Positive beliefs about worry are when we believe worry is basically useful. Okay. So I'm not talking about problem solving here, because I know I talk about functional worry. I'm not talking about problem solving. I'm talking about when just we're stuck in worry and the distress and the agitation of worry, and we believe that state is useful. So worry helps me to avoid problems in the future. Worry helps me be prepared. Worry helps me solve problems. Worry keeps me in control of the situation. And so, for example, you know, knowing that my cancer come back is actually useful, because at least then it's not going to be a big shock, right? But again, we miss the opportunity to be in the present moment there, to realize that actually right now that problem is not, it's not current. Negative beliefs about worry are the ones that suggest that worry is uncontrollable or dangerous or has some sort of negative consequences. So worrying is dangerous for me. I have no control over the worry. My worries have taken control of my life. If my worry continues, I'll lose my mind and go crazy. And there's a particular kind of negative belief about worry, which many people who are going through cancer struggle with, and it's called meta worry. It's the idea that we worry. It's the idea that if we worry, we will not heal or our cancer will progress. So it's the idea that the worry, we worry about the fact that we worry and about the negative consequences of the worry. And it's relating to the belief that we need to stay positive in order to reduce stress and to heal well. And sometimes, I mean, when I see this in my practice, I see it as being oftentimes really counterproductive, because it puts a lot of pressure on ourselves to have the right thoughts and the right attitude at all times. And it creates a lot of stress, right? And this pressure creates a lot of stress. So if you are struggling with this kind of meta worry, I will not have any strategies to address that today, because I think it's a tricky one that requires kind of a bit more of an intervention. So I'd encourage you to reach out to your doctor, to your therapist, to Wellspring for supports around this, for counseling supports around this. But I wanted to name it because it's quite common. So again, both positive and negative worry beliefs correlate with anxiety, depression, post-traumatic stress, and positive worry beliefs correlate. So the ones that say worrying is useful correlate with fear of cancer recurrence as well. So take a moment to reflect for yourself what kind of worry beliefs you may have. So I've put the options here, A, B, C, D. So take a moment for yourself. You don't have to put this in the chat, just for yourself, to circle the ones that you hold, that you identify with. Worry will make me feel better. Worry is uncontrollable. I worry about the fact that I worry, or worry is controllable and harmless. And I want to say that if you've answered A, B, or C, it may mean that you're holding some of these positive or negative worry beliefs. And I would encourage you to pay particular attention to, when we're talking about coping strategies, to the ones that we're talking about that relate to challenging our worry beliefs. And, you might do this using the strategies that I'm talking about today, or you might, want to do this by doing your own research and reading your own books and talking to your supports or doing your own counseling, or doing your own self-care, right? Your own process. But where we want to get, if we want to work with worry beliefs in a way that is helpful to reduce worry, is to be able to say worry is controllable and harmless. That's where we want to get. So we'll shift gears a little bit and we'll talk about coping strategies. And I'll talk about unhelpful coping strategies and helpful coping strategies. So unhelpful coping strategies are not the ones that are actually not reducing worry. They will be reducing worry, but they'll reduce worry immediately in the moment, but long term, they're not going to reduce the likelihood of worry. Okay, so it might reduce it in this moment today, or maybe just in this moment, but next week we'll still be dealing with worry. So first one, for example, is reassurance seeking. So that might mean calling your doctor frequently, checking your results frequently, asking a lot of questions about what will happen in the future, asking for certainty. A lot of people kind of are looking for certainty where there isn't any, right? Because nobody knows what might happen in the future. But if that's really difficult, we might want to seek reassurance. Avoidance is also one that's unhelpful. So that's kind of the example of, I'm not going to talk about it with my loved ones. I'm not even going to think about it. This is not happening to me. Substance use. So I'm starting to feel worried. Let me have a glass of wine. Information searching. So Googling symptoms, Googling outcomes, looking for statistics, things like that. So that's, again, not that it's not useful, but it's in response to worry, right? So I feel worried, quickly, let me just do some more Googling, even though I've done a lot of Googling before and I have all the information I need, right? But that's in response to the worry to try to reduce it. Distraction is a really common strategy. We live in a world full of distraction and we encourage distraction for ourselves and each other. So it's a really common one. I'm going to watch a movie and not think about it, right? And I'll talk a little bit more about distraction when it's useful and when it's not. And thought suppression, it's the idea of I'm just not going to think about it, right? I'm stopping the thought right here. I'm not going to think about it. And some of these unhelpful coping strategies actually reinforce the negative beliefs about worry. For example, thought suppression, when it doesn't work and the worry comes back, we try not to think about it, but the worry comes back. It reinforces the idea that worries are uncontrollable. So helpful coping strategies are the ones that, again, will decrease worry, but they might do it a bit slower, but over the long term, they will overall decrease the worry. They give us the opportunity to rewire our brains and to change some of the habits of excessive worry. This is why we call them helpful coping strategies. Well, the first one we'll be talking about is scheduled worry time. And I find this strategy useful when we find ourselves worrying a lot, like all the time, 24/7, worry is always in the background. And it goes like this. It's choosing a time daily, maybe 10, maybe 15 minutes to worry, okay? And so we mark the beginning and end of worry time with a little ritual or music, or we do it in a certain corner of the house, or light a candle, or light incense, or just we mark it as a separate part of our day. And during that time, we allow everything to happen. We allow all the worry, all the despair, the self-pity, all the emotions that are hard and we don't want, we allow them during that time, or we just allow ourselves to worry. What if this, what if that, what if this, what if that? And at the end of the worry time, we put it away. So sometimes it's helpful to have a little visualization, which I'm going to offer in the next slide, to put the worry away, or, you know, if you're using music or a candle, it's just blowing out the candle or turning off the music. But the point is to mark the beginning and end very clearly, so that in your mind, this is clear. This is worry time, and then the rest of the time is not worry time. So at the rest of the time, when it's not worry time, then the invitation is to delay it. To say, okay, yes, I get the worries here, but I'm not going to think about it now. I'm going to think about it at 9 o'clock tomorrow, which is my worry time. And then you can use distraction here. So at other times you can use distraction. And sometimes it's helpful to carry even a journal with you, to write down the worries that come at the end, like throughout the day, that are not part of your worry time. So people find that really useful to just get it out of their mind and write it down so that they can let it go. And then, you know, you can review it when you're doing your worry time. So I'm going to lead a little practice, just a 2-minute practice of visualizing containment. So I'm going to invite you to, if you want to participate, take a moment to come to a comfortable position, allowing your eyes to close if that feels okay. And taking a few deep breaths, so let go of everything that took up this moment. If you'd rather not participate in this visualization, that's okay too, just allowing the words to pass by you. So at the end of the worry time, you might tell yourself, I've done important work today. It's time to put it away so I can go about my day and rest. I'm entitled to rest and refresh myself. I deserve to rest when I'm tired. And the issues will still be here when I need them, but right now it's time to put them away. And I'll deal with them at a more convenient time. So thinking of a container, a physical container that you may want to use that would feel secure. Some people use a jar, the image of a jar, or a treasure chest, something that has a lock, something that can be closed. So thinking of what container you'd like to use. And now going to all the parts of you that are still feeling upset, and letting those parts know that you'll be taking care of this, but you'll be doing it at your own time. And acknowledging that these issues are important, treating them with respect because they're yours. But now it's time to put them away. So visualizing yourself putting away all the images and sounds and thoughts and ideas and emotions and physical sensations. Putting them in your container. And then closing the container or locking it and placing it somewhere safe and sound. And when you've done that, taking your time to kind of visualize all of this, taking all the images and sounds and all the things that are disturbing your peace, putting them in a container when you've locked it, and when you've done that, allowing your eyes to open. Okay, so this is a containment visualization that you can use at the end of your worry time if that's helpful. There are other ones like imagining worry, get into a bubble and floating away, or imagining it being a fish and flowing away. So whatever works for you, but it might be useful to have sort of a little ritual to mark that. So now we're talking a bit about worry, challenging worry beliefs, and I'll be talking only about challenging positive worry beliefs. Again, if you have negative worry beliefs, that's a bit more tricky, and it's requires a bit more of an intervention. In my experience, I would encourage you to, if you'd like to work with it, to speak to someone about where you can get more help, maybe your doctor, maybe someone at Wellspring. But we'll be talking about challenging positive worry beliefs. So here's a quote that I feel really captures positive worry beliefs. And so it goes like this: don't spend a lot of time imagining the worst case scenario. It rarely happens as you imagine it will. And if by some fluke it does, you will have lived it twice. So the point here is that you live it once when you imagine it, and you live it once again if it ends up happening, when it actually happens. And the invitation again is to be able to focus on the present, and to live life fully right now. I'm not talking about it not being helpful to be prepared, but a lot of worrying about something that we don't have all the information about is not really useful. So sometimes it's helpful to ask ourselves, what am I missing out on if I'm worrying 24/7? Or what would I be doing or thinking about or experiencing instead of worrying right now? And another way to challenge our worry beliefs is this very sort of structured approach called worry mismatch strategy. And it's to really look at our past examples in which worry wasn't predicting reality. So writing out on the left side the worry script. For example, I worry that my next MRI would show progression, and then writing what actually happened, the reality script. My MRI did not show progression. Or I worried that I will get an infection after my surgery. I did not get an infection after my surgery. So just an opportunity to remind yourself in your own experience that not everything we worry about actually comes true. And then again, that worry often makes us feel less present in the moment and miss out on opportunities for joy and peace, right? Because we're preoccupied with a problem that's not here right now. And I want to talk a little bit more about the difference between worry and problem solving. So I touched upon it a little bit, but I wanted to kind of give a little bit more structure to it. So worry happens automatically. Problem solving happens by choice. We're intentional about it. Worry, we recognize worry by seeing statements that start with what if. Problem solving is focused on solutions. Worries about things that we cannot control, and problem solving distinguishes between the things we can control and we cannot control, focuses on things we can control, and let's go of the other ones. Worry is non-actionable, problem solving is actionable. We can do something. Worry is fear-based, problem solving is action-based, worry is loopy. We might just find ourselves thinking the same thing over and over again. Problem solving is sequential and organized. If A, then B. If C, then D. Worry, it promotes feeling exhausted, and problem solving promotes feeling empowered, and worry increases stress, and problem solving decreases stress. So again, a little bit of a simplification, but I hope that this kind of guide can be useful in helping you distinguish, because sometimes we think we are problem solving, but we're actually just stuck in worrying. So for example, worry might say, what if I will be too sick to care for my children when I'm doing chemo? And problem solving might say, if I'm too sick, I'll ask for help during that time. I can call my mom or my sister to stay with us while I'm doing chemo. So it's actionable. It promotes feeling empowered. It focuses on the thing we can control. That's how we recognize it. So we'll talk about the worry tree next, which is a good tool to help us get from worry to problem solving. And it helps us transform dysfunctional worry into functional worry. So the worry tree is something that we do naturally when we problem solve easily, but sometimes when we are triggered or stuck somehow, it's helpful to have a guide. So this is how it goes. The first step is to notice the worry. So let's say I'm a caregiver and my loved one's symptoms have changed. So there's a new minor ache somewhere. And then the invitation is to ask, what am I worried about? I'm worried about the cancer having progressed. And then we ask ourselves, is this worry about a current situation? And we ask ourselves, can I do something about this? So if it's about a current, if it's not about a current situation and we cannot do anything about it, which is not the case in this example, then the invitation is to let the worry go and change the focus of attention. If the answer is yes, that it is a current situation or that I can do something about this, to either of those questions, the answer is yes. Then we go into problem solving. So what can I do? What's the action plan? What, when, how? Doing it now, great to do it now, and then let the worry go and change focus of attention. If it's possible, if it's only possible to do it later, then we schedule it and let the worry go and change the focus of attention. So, so for example, it might say, yes, in this example, we might say, I can talk to them about reporting it the next follow-up, or I can help them schedule a follow-up sooner, or we can track the symptoms before the appointment. That's the problem solving piece. And then the invitation is to let it go. Okay, so that's the worry tree tool. Some people find it really helpful and print it and put it on their fridge, because it's a nice reminder of how our mind works when we actually problem solve well, right? And I'm going to talk in this context a little bit about using distraction effectively. So if you remember, I talked about distraction as a tool, an unhelpful coping strategy, because it can increase anxiety and worry. But it doesn't always. So I'll talk about when it's helpful and when it's not. And really the distinction is between suppressing worry and letting worry go. That's when we use it. So let me just go through it. So if we're looking at the worry tree, if we use distraction at the very top, when we say, I'm noticing I'm worrying, okay, my loved one has a new pain, I'm so worried about it, I can't handle it, I'm going to distract myself, I'm just going to watch a movie and not think about it. That's suppressing worry. That's when we are using distraction in an ineffective way, and usually that increases worry, because when we're trying to suppress it, it comes back. And it comes back stronger often. But when we are using distraction at the very bottom there, after we've gone through the worry tree, after we've decided, is this in my control? What's in my control? What can I do about it? Excuse me. If we use distraction at the bottom to change focus of attention, once we've decided what we can do about it, that's when we're letting the worry go. And that's when distraction is actually helpful. And the last piece I wanted to talk about is mindfulness. We offer a particular kind of mindfulness practice when we're working with thoughts. It's called open awareness. And I'll just guide that a little bit. So if you'd like to participate, I'm going to invite you to take a moment to come to a comfortable position, allowing your eyes to close if that feels okay. And take a few deep breaths to let go of everything that took to get here. Beginning to bring the attention to the breath. And just noticing physical sensations of the breathing in this moment. When you're ready, letting go of the breath and bringing the attention to sounds. Sounds at the level of the ear. So noticing the pitch and the volume of sound, the length, rather than trying to label what sound it is or where it's coming from or what it means. The invitation is to just notice it as a physical sensation almost. sounds as having a beginning, a middle, and an end. Sounds inside the room or outside of the room. Sounds from within our body or from outside of our body. And when you're ready, letting go of sound, bringing the attention to thoughts in the same way we paid attention to sounds. So we're bringing attention to mind space and noticing any thoughts that come through. And rather than exploring the meaning or riding the wave of the thought, the invitation is to just notice thoughts as thoughts. Notice them as having a beginning, a middle, and an end, just like clouds. Clouds in the sky. So the sky is our awareness and the clouds are the thoughts. When you're ready, beginning to bring the attention to beginning to bring the attention to the body, wiggling your fingers and toes, giving yourself a good stretch, and taking your time to bring the attention back to the room. So, excuse me. So this is a practice in mindfulness. It was very short. We usually need a little bit longer to really get into it. But I wanted to give you a taste of what it might look like to work with mindful curiosity with thoughts. Okay. So really quickly at the end, I'll talk a little bit about just some ways to make these strategies last. So setting your intention. So if there's anything that spoke to you today that you'd like to try out or use, setting your intention, because when we're on autopilot, what actually our response might not be helpful. So setting our intention to be intentional about it. Starting small, so just choosing one, sticking to it, and just continuing with that, right? Just starting one. We don't want to change everything in once because we're setting ourselves up for failure. Starting again. So when we notice that we're back on autopilot and we relate to worry the way we usually do, just starting again. Every time we do it, it helps rewire our brain. And sometimes saying yes means saying no. So if we choose to practice it, like worry time, it might mean that we need to give up something else for the 15 minutes. What are we willing to give up in that day? And then to just end, I'm listing here again the strategies that I named as useful coping strategies. And I'm going to invite you, if any of them spoke to you, to choose one. And if you want to give it a try, and then think about how and when you might use it. Why does it speak to you? How does it fit into your life? When do you see yourself doing it? Is it a structured practice or more of a kind of intuitive practice? Is it, small kind of snippets during the day, or is it a scheduled time? And what would help remind you? So perhaps it might be a reminder on your phone or on your schedule, or it might be Post-it notes around the house or a piece of jewelry. You want to kind of assign that meaning so that you can remind you. Okay, so that's the invitation for today. I see some messages in the chat. One of sharing the diagram of Worry Tree. I'm happy to do that by email after. And so I'll send it to Vinitha, I guess, and Vinitha can send it along. And putting back the steps. Okay. This part, Annabelle, tricks to make it last. Setting your intention, starting small, start again. Sometimes saying yes and saying no. Okay, thank you. Yeah, sorry, I went through that a little fast because I'm looking at the time and we're out of time. So this is the presentation today. I hope that you found some of it useful and informative. And right now, that's all I had to say. So right now, I'm happy to answer some questions if there are any.